Let me start. I'll introduce myself, Jonathan Hurd. I'm a director with Altman Valandri and Company. We're a strategy consulting firm focused on communications and media. So let's go down the panel and please introduce yourselves and tell us what you do in this space.
I'm kind of busy watching internet TV on this iPad.
Oh, is it broken?
No, it's working pretty well.
Actually, this one isn't broken. Okay. It's working.
I'm not going to steal his thunder, though, but it's working. Anyway, my name is Emil Rensing. I run digital for a cable network called Epix. We've launched our channel about 2.5 years ago. We're kind of rocking and rolling. We had just wrapped up a big ad campaign here in New York about a week and a half ago around the Avengers film. The neat thing about our channel is that we distribute both online as well as on air. So if you have our channel in your home, you can come on to our website or any one of our connected devices, including our Roku, which we love. Punch in a couple of pieces of data from your cable account, and it unlocks about 3,000 movies for you for no additional fee on top of your cable bill. It's first-run product from studios like Paramount, Lionsgate, and MGM. So we have small movies like The Avengers and Iron Man 3 and Transformers and this Hunger Games thing that I don't know. I guess somebody has seen it somewhere. Being a joint venture owned by the studios, we have a lot of flexibility in how we do things. And our entire mission is really around trying to make new modes of viewership, including internet television, a real proposition and a valuable one at that.
Great. Matt.
Hi, I'm Matt Smith, and I'm a Vice President of Internet Television for Vivio. We help broadcasters, service providers, multiple system operators convert their content so it's viewable on any screen, on any network, whether it's their network or a public CDN, with a partner of ours like Akamai or like Limelight. And help them condition this content so that no matter what the screen is, no matter who the customer is, to Emil's point, that we help them convert that content so that the viewer can consume it at any time and so that I don't distract anyone else. This is kind of implementation of that, showing really how TV everywhere comes together, whether it's an on-demand asset or a live asset. This would be in the iPad, but again, any piece of glass, any network, any time. Is the proposition. And with TV Everywhere, that I'm sure most of you have heard of, we're seeing an astronomical number of deployments, either in the plans or actually in the execution phase today. I'm happy to be here. And the internet is broken. TV is broken.
Greg.
Yes, hi, I'm Greg DePalma. I'm Vice President of Audience Insights for TiVo. And I have a couple different roles. One is really to understand the changing behavior with the consumers. We've seen just over a couple of years, especially the younger demographics, moving away from linear TV to OTT. And I think the biggest question we have right now is making sure that our interface lines up with what our consumers want. Okay, because our interface for the 50-plus demographic is a lot different from the interface that the 25 and under want. So that's our big challenge. And then the second thing is on the content side is what content are our customers asking for? Because we get approached every day, distribute this, that, X, Y, and Z. And so we have to be careful to choose what we can distribute to support from an engineering, from a space standpoint, and so forth. So those are the kind of things that keep me up at night.
And I'm Ed Lee. I'm Vice President of Content Acquisition for Roku. Roku, for those of you who don't know, Roku is a streaming media player that connects to your television set, streams media over the web to your TV in high definition. We have over 500 channel partners today, everybody from Netflix to Hulu Plus, Amazon, Pandora, all the major sports leagues outside of the NFL, and a series of casual games. We're distributed throughout the United States, the UK, and Canada. And we're available in all the major retailers here in the States. I'm happy to be here and look forward to your questions.
Great. All right. Well, let's start out with, we're going to take a variety of different perspectives, looking at internet video from different angles of players in the value chain. But let's start with the consumer perspective. Who of you on the panel thinks internet TV is broken today from a consumer perspective? All right. We got 2.5. All right, so Ed and the other half of Greg, not broken then?
Not broken.
Not broken? All right. Well, let's hear the not broken. Why do you say it's not broken?
You want to go first?
Well, I say it's not broken because if you look really hard, you can find what you want. But as a user, you don't want to look that hard, right? You don't want to have to spend 15 minutes to find your show. So I feel like we're moving in the right direction. But from TiVo's perspective, which is all about user interface, we want to make it easy for consumers to find what they want. So we just feel right now the space that it's in is it's getting in the right directions. We just need to help the UI and help people find what they're looking for, when they're looking for it, and so forth.
So you're saying the content is there, so that's
Yes.
not broken.
Right.
The UI needs help, and you're helping.
Yes.
All right, Ed. What about you?
Yeah, I mean, I think sort of trying to understand the question: is it broken? I mean, broken is a pretty strong word. I mean, broken just simply means it doesn't work, and I don't think that's the case. I think Internet TV is still in its infancy. I think there are growing pains, certainly. I mean, I think there are certainly things that can be optimized. Obviously, usability, discoverability, metrics, ratings, all that type of, all those types of things can be improved and enhanced. But from the standpoint of whether or not it's broken, I think customers have expressed an interest in getting access to content in a myriad of different ways. We have 3 million customers, so 3 million customers can't be wrong. And so, I mean, I think there are a lot of alternate ways in which people can get content through a myriad of different devices, and the usage statistics are growing on a regular basis. So I think sort of at this stage in development for Internet TV, do I think it's broken? I don't think it's broken. Do I think there are changes and enhancements that need to happen and will happen? Absolutely.
So not broken, but needs something, needs improvement.
Yeah,
we're still in the infancy of internet video.
Pay TV is you can argue it's broken, you can argue it's not broken. I mean, it needs changing. So I think, I think it needs some
Yep, Emil, what do you think? You said broken.
I think what Ed sort of wrapped up is sort of the key thing. That's why it's broken, because the business model behind it is broken, right? And first of all, you two are biased because you two have two of the best products in the space, right? The TiVo and the Roku in my house is sort of where everybody sort of spends their time, and by everybody I mean me and my personalities. But I mean those are my two go-to devices, and frankly for us at Epix we do have a channel on Roku. Roku is a great platform to build for. It's pretty easy to build for. It's quick to build for. And we actually do something on Roku that we don't do on any of our other devices, which is we make the live signal available to our authenticated subscribers on the Roku platform. So, we offer like a legit full, I may have all the same movies on Xbox as I do on Roku, but I don't have the live feed on Xbox or iOS or Android. And obviously TiVo, your new HD interface is fantastic. The I don't even know how you guys describe it, but I kind of describe it as the transport agnostic discovery bar, right? I keep getting recommended movies that I can get on Amazon Prime or that I can get on Hulu or that I can get on Netflix, and I'm looking forward to actually having my movies in there one of these days when I'm popular enough to do that. But for me, I think that there are sort of two things from a consumer perspective that make it broken. Number one, when I turn on my TV, 99 times out of 100, thank you TiVo, it's on a channel that I want to watch, already recording something that it thinks I might like. So by definition of turning that button on, my discovery time is contracted quite dramatically, right? Because there's a very good likelihood that it's watching something that I want to watch, or just recorded something I want to watch, or is making an educated guess about what it is that I want to watch. And it's always doing it 24 hours a day, 365 days a year. And if it doesn't, the only time my TiVo is unusable is when I go on vacation for a week and I come back and there's 190 things in my TiVo suggestions folder, and all I can do is delete them because I don't have that kind of time. From my perspective as a consumer, though, I look at it and I sit there and say, well, when I have something in mind that I want to watch or what I want to find, there is no single, consistent, easy way for me to get it outside of the business models that Hollywood predicates its entire existence on, which sometimes work very well and other times are a little bit less obvious. And my argument is Star Wars. Why the hell can't I watch Star Wars when I want to watch Star Wars? We've all seen it 1,000 times. I have it on DVD. That's awesome, but I can't type it into my Roku or my TiVo or even on epixhd.com and find it. And that to me is when I start to think about, okay, well, the system is broken and there's something not quite right there. Yes, you know what, maybe broken is too strong of a word, because you hit your Roku and as long as your internet connection is up, the thing plays. It's a very reliable device. Same thing with TiVo when you're looking for music or you're looking for or for television from one of those services. The systems work, but the discovery piece, the availability piece, the business models behind it, it's all very convoluted and very confusing.
Fair enough.
Sorry.
That's and Matt.
So I'll take it one step further, and I don't. So the broken term, I think I agree, is pretty strong. I would call it under construction. Models are emerging, content exists, platforms exist. We're frankly still building the road, right? The infancy term, I think, is a valid one. I think some of the biggest challenges that are going to exist or that do exist today, and for the near term, are things like discovery. Someone here on the panel talked about, maybe it was Ed. Try to find the content that you want with this new model versus the models that exist today for the lean back experience. You're used to a channel guide. They're vastly different and they need work. We have to fix them. Quality is key. I mean, you touched on that. There is an erroneous perception about quality. I don't think we've had a watershed event in the evening day part of significant of magnitude to really stress test the internet to see if we can all consume one thing at the same time, like a Super Bowl type event, in an evening day part. That's another thing that we're going to have to tackle, right? We don't know if the system can accommodate all of this. And with due respect to my friends at Akamai, they have a wonderful network, but frankly, we haven't stressed it enough. We don't know if it'll work. And it reminds me of the days of working for Mark Cuban, when he said, well, we just need to make the whole internet multicast enabled, right? It's easier said than done, and our friends in the telco business will tell you that. Lastly, the other thing that exists, and my panelists here have just touched on it briefly, is our rights and access, right? The consumer wants the piece of content they want anywhere, anytime, on any screen. The realities of the business model are that doesn't exist today. Will it in the future? Absolutely. Will we move from a model where we've got B2B, where you're getting it through a channel provider today? Absolutely. We'll have a B2C model in the future to where you can buy an evening's programming from ABC because you heard that Cougar Town and Modern Family were the funniest shows on television. So for $3 or $4, you're going to be able to consume that block of programming with the toll that you throw out the window to Verizon for stringing the fiber to your curb. These models will emerge. The question is when and how that revenue will stack up to get the attention of programmers, channel providers, and the broadcasters to kind of tip it in the consumer's favor.
So what do you see happening there from your various perspectives in the value chain, whether you're more on the user interface side or more on the content production side or an enabler? What do you see happening to improve the user interface? Because, to pick up on one point here, there may be content out there, but I've got confusing user interfaces from individual providers sometimes. And then I often have to go to multiple different over-the-top video service providers to find content, to see what they've got. But what are the trends that you see that might improve that?
Well, I can speak to that. When we first signed up Netflix as a partner, you had to go online and select the programs that you wanted to enter into the queue. And then when you got your TiVo, there were the shows, okay? But you couldn't search. Like I have the Wii version that I access Netflix, and then I have TiVo. And at Wii, you got to scroll around, search, and so forth. It was a little clunky. And then TiVo finally, I just saw the alpha test, and it looks just like the website. Okay, once again, brand consistency important. People can see the same thing on the website. And secondly, it makes it a lot easier for the consumers to find. So I think the goal is to, brands that succeed, stand for something. They have the consistent on consumer touch points, right? So when you go into a BMW dealer, you see performance. When you see the ad, you see performance. When you see the car and so forth, sponsorships, it's all about performance. And so what we've been trying to do is take the Netflix interface, which was a little clunky at first, but it was the way we could get it in via the engineers, and now finally migrate that towards the same experience you have online. So that's what we're trying to do, is get people comfortable of using an interface, whether it's Netflix, Hulu, Amazon, whatever, and they're used to it, searching it on the internet and making the TV screen look the same exact way. And we actually have a remote control that's a QWERTY flip-up. It's I think it's the only QWERTY flip remote control. So instead of having to scroll and type out the Muppet Show, I have young kids, you've got the QWERTY keyboard there on you flip it up and you just type in Muppets and boom, comes right to the top. So our goal is to make the consumer experience easier, to help them find shows that are relevant, quicker.
That's interesting. I was going to ask about the remote control part of the user experience. I mean, it's one thing to have a menu on the screen and be able to search and explore with that, but how you actually control what you see on the screen, I think, is an area that is, to me, broken in many ways. If you want to find a YouTube video, good luck. On most user interfaces, it's a real pain. So what are you seeing in the way? A keyboard is certainly one option. What are you seeing in the way of more user-friendly, I guess, remotes?
So what I've heard, and I haven't seen it, is when Google had their TV, they had some sci-fi big QWERTY keyboard, right?
Yeah.
And it didn't look like a remote control. Our theory was, you're watching TV, we want you to watch it the way you usually do, but give you the option of switching from, hey, you can still scroll it down, or you can flip it up and type right in. So part of the things is, the new Netflix is type in your email address and password, would save me 10 minutes on that versus, going one letter at a time. Once you're signed in, you're good. And then you can browse movies, and it makes it a lot easier. So our whole goal is to make searching easier. And the thing that I like about our interface is you can search on Woody Allen, you can search on actor, you can search on type of show. If you like this, you turn that on, you get, I've discovered so many shows that I didn't know, like the Bee in Apartment 23. Great show. I had no clue about it. I actually discovered that word of mouth through one of my colleagues. But it would have been nice if somehow the system was smart enough to say, hey, you like these type comedies, here's a show you might like. And we do that for the most part, but we don't nail every one. So it's a combination of being a smart TV that has a little AI that says, okay, like Pandora, if you like this, you'll like that. And then B, the fact that it makes search much easier because it's all about search on TV.
You mentioned earlier younger versus older audiences. In the research we've done, we've seen a very different willingness to use devices for remote control other than a typical remote. Younger audiences are much more interested in using iPads or smartphones or whatever. Are the rest of you seeing any user interfaces that are superior to a traditional remote? And and what are your thoughts there in terms of, I know we're in the infancy of internet video, but where do you see it going from a control perspective? Yeah, Ed in particular. Yeah, what?
Were you going to do something?
There we go. That's the
question.
answer. All right.
Again, I think as you were touching on before, it's all about simplicity, and so a consistent user experience across device to a point. What we found in our research, our demo skews a little bit older than sort of the traditional early adopter demographic. But for us, it's really about simplicity. And so being able to give a consumer sort of a TV experience in their living room as opposed to sort of copying a mobile experience to their TV or a PC experience to their TV, we've just found in some consumer studies that just doesn't work. And so what we found is that customers want a very, very simple interface. They want to be able to navigate. They want to be able to get into content within 2 or 3 clicks, and they're not really interested in lots of fancy HTML web pages where they have to sort of scroll through page to page to get access to more and more content. So our content partners really appreciate the fact that it's all about simplicity. Now we have a long way to go in terms of making some UI changes and enhancements, which we'll be addressing in the near term. But and from a remote control standpoint, if you look at a Roku remote, I think there's 11 buttons on the remote control, and so it's a very, very basic remote control. I love the QWERTY keyboard idea. I think that's fantastic, and we should think about that. But again, really trying to keep it as simple as possible and keep it as intuitive as possible, so that consumers can get to content as quickly as possible, so you can emulate and sort of replicate an existing TV experience.
Emil, you mentioned, or one of the other ways that the experience is broken is around content rights. What do you see happening in terms of trends there? Are things getting more complex, windows and deals and exclusive content, or are you seeing things start to fall into a pattern?
Well, I think that audiences are going to vote with their consumption behaviors, with their consumption habits, and that's going to force the rights holders to change their ways. We looked at it very organically a number of years ago and said, my God, there's a seismic shift happening, and our studio partners were sort of visionary enough to kind of come up with this model for us to kind of straddle both sides of the world. We distribute through cable operators, we distribute through satellite operators, we distribute through telco operators, and we distribute online. We have this deal with this small company called Netflix, and they pay us a metric shit ton of money. That is actually an amount. For first-run feature films, and they get them in a slight delay over the cable operators, but it's a very aggressive deal for Netflix. It's probably their only real content deal in Hollywood that gets, actually it is their only real content deal in Hollywood that gets them first-run theatrical product. And the reason why the other guys haven't really done that is because they have their own intricacies with their established distribution partners, and there's a little bit of friction between them, as you can imagine, trying to free up those internet distribution rights. And as much as I like to sit here and say, yeah, you know what, we got that shit nailed, yo, the truth of the matter is we all have a lot of work to do. I'm a small fraction of the rights window. If you look at the 10-year lifespan of a feature film, I have 22 to 28 months, depending on the film, in its life cycle that we can actually experiment with it and derive revenue in that pay TV window. There's a lot of stuff that happens before we get it, and there's a lot of stuff that happens after we get it. But we're demonstrating that there is an appetite for both established distribution partners and emerging distribution partners to make product available in new ways. You mentioned earlier about the older audience and the younger audience. We're the youngest audience in pay television by about 12 or 13 years, and there's nothing average about that average, right? It's very bimodal. Our audience subset that mirrors what you would see on an HBO or a Showtime or a Starz, they're watching TV with their remote control, they may or may not be DVRing, and they may or may not be using set-top box VOD. However, because we have such an aggressive footprint with folks like Roku and emerging footprints with folks like TiVo, and apps on Xbox and iPad and Android and iPhone and Google TV and Samsung and Joe's House of Bits and Bops, we have a very younger audience that kind of goes in there and consumes product at a very high rate of consumption. But the challenge for me is it still takes me longer, in many cases, to find what I want to watch than it does for me to eat a piece of pizza. Right? And if you've ever kind of been in that, remote control, discovery, search, push, promotion, it still takes a while for me to kind of nail down, and by the time I finish my piece of pizza, do I really need to see last week's episode of 30 Rock? So I mean, all of these things sort of come in very anecdotally. Are technically we able to do this? Yeah, sure, probably, possibly. Do we have the rights for enough product to actually make it valuable to people? Well, my company's making money, so I'm going to argue yes. Are there players in the space who have a huge head start? 3 million boxes out there from Roku is nothing. That's huge, guys. That's ginormous in this space. So, there's demand, there's appetite. Are rights going to get easier and clearer? Sure, because people aren't going to be paying for it the way they did. The only question is, are they going to die, or are people actually going to discover something new? Right? There was one point where somebody was sort of equating cable disconnect rates to the rate of the death rate in the United States, and that was obviously not a popular construct and was ultimately disproved in some way. But at the end of the day, those rights are going to get resolved when people stop doing stuff, right? When Blu-ray discs are too hard, and I keep hearing that Apple, my next MacBook isn't going to have a DVD drive in it. I guess that's a good thing. I don't think I've used my DVD drive ever. But that's the beginning of the next phase. When those business models start to decline, somebody's got to figure something out.
But you're onto something, because the model has to change to support the new viewing patterns. You talked about people voting with their eyeballs, and this is going to happen. And I don't want to wave the flag here and say the sky's falling, the cord cutting is bigger than anyone thinks. I think it's been grossly overstated. But think about today's 20-something recent college graduate and their viewing patterns. It's completely different, and it breaks down by demographic. These viewing patterns are changing dramatically, and what I've spoken about before is the primary screen. The primary screen for those of us on this dais is probably a 50-inch Samsung or Toshiba in our living room, whether it's hanging on the wall or sitting on some stand. But the primary screen for the 22-year-old Wharton graduate is this screen right here. That's what they watch on. They may be watching Hulu, they may be watching Epix Online, they may be watching ABC.com, but their viewing patterns have changed.
Or stealing.
And granted,
because a lot of times that's easier.
Yeah, but think about, we haven't made it easy for these people to consume premium content and pay for it legally. We have to solve this problem. They will pay for this content because of the way that we'll structure this. They may not pay $90 a month for 150 channels, 10 of which they consume, but they will need some sort of model going forward, and we've got to figure these problems out. This is another part that's not broken, but under construction. These are the things that we need to think about.
Has anyone on the panel, and then I'll ask the audience, any of you taken your old DVDs to Walmart and got them stamped with indelible ink, and for $2 had the video available on Vudu? Has anyone done that yet? Anyone in the audience done that? Just curious.
It's too difficult.
Interesting. It sounds pretty
difficult.
like a pain in the neck, actually, doesn't it?
Yeah. DRM is not the answer.
So another thing that's broken is
high tech, right?
When I work out in the morning and I have my iPad, and the promise of internet video is awesome, because using HBO Go, I can watch old Wire episodes of The Wire, and I finally made it to the 5th season. But which means I don't work out that much. No, I actually have a lot of problems getting a good quality signal, and I'll try the hotel Wi-Fi, I'll try my AT&T 3G connection, but that last mile of over-the-top video, and Matt, you were mentioning earlier can the infrastructure support heavy demand? What are your thoughts, Matt, on infrastructure? If you could go into that a little more. And from my experience, that's the thing that's most broken, is getting that video to my tablet out of home.
Yeah, we've made some advances as an industry in the last couple of years. 2 years ago, with the advent of adaptive bitrate or ABR, we really improved the way through which we deliver high-quality video to any of these screens, right? Through what's called chunk delivery. All the 3 major formats support it. To your point, Jonathan, about startup time, sure, there are some issues with the different formats, and depending on the network you're on and what kind of connection you're on. But by and large, I think I don't know if I'd call it advanced to state of the art, but we've definitely improved the overall experience. You can watch HD quality content depending on the screen you're on. Startup times are reasonable, and the experience is by and large a very high quality experience. And then think about the numbers that we've read about where people are consuming. We've mentioned it probably the 27th time today. Netflix in the evening day part. It constitutes somewhere between 30 and 40% of all internet traffic in the evening. And that's all, chunked in HTTP delivery over public networks, that you use to consume lots of other content. So the infrastructure's there. We're able to deliver these experiences with high quality, a minimum of disruption. But What we need to get to are that type of channel change type experience where you can go from a high definition type over the top feed to the next one, to the next one, to the next one, kind of like your television experience is today. We're not there yet. We're getting there. There are some very smart people in the industry working on it. These are complex problems to solve. And again, this is back to the under construction notion I mentioned earlier. So I think while we've come a long way, and the technology is really adopted, and those of you who are in the audience who've been around this industry for more than 5 years can relate to the term buffering, right? We've gotten rid of that very negative perception in the industry. We've come a long way, but we still have a good way to go. It's kind of like halfway through the marathon, and maybe a third of the way into it.
Mm-hmm. What about?
But even more fundamentally, I mean, if you have an AT&T phone in New York City, try using it in Times Square in about 35 minutes. It's not going to dial, to say nothing about getting internet service. I think that's part of what the issue. Everybody keeps talking cloud. No, thank you, guys. I'm not doing that. I'll buy hard drives until it actually works. I told my dad I'd call him after the panel. I'm like, all right, I'll call you at 6:30. It just doesn't. You can't make a phone call. So how are you going to get data? How are you going to get video?
Yeah, I think that's the same idea of shifting from streaming to downloaded, because.
Let's be a little bit more pragmatic.
Okay.
Let's forget about that whole IP thing for a second. Right. We got this neat thing called broadcast.
Yeah.
This VHF, UHF, digital signal thing. I mean, that kind of works.
Yeah,
and you guys live in that world in a very interesting way at TiVo. So, I mean, when you start talking about internet television, how does all this stuff sort of come to pass, and how does that sort of, turn into something, right? So, can we solve the experience? Probably. Can we solve the business models? Yeah, it'll get there eventually when somebody misses a quarter and gets fired, and then somebody will figure it out. But as it goes on, right now, we started the panel by asking, is it broken or is it not broken? It all kind of adds up to, it's not working.
Right, I was just going to use an analogy. Every time Sunday night we go to put on the Disney movie on Netflix, 10 minutes into the movie, buffering, got to reboot the system, and...
Sounds like you need a new TiVo.
That or a better connection. But it's just, the kids get frustrated, and the wife's like, we should cancel this, and so forth. But, that's one of the big things, and I've heard different theories about it. It's like, hey, it's your cable system in the neighborhood, right? And I don't know if it's true or not. But, yeah, that prime time drains a lot on the Netflix, the way I see it in the streaming. So if you could download it beforehand and have it queued up, ready to go on your hard drive, kind of like a DVR system, it would work better. But we've experienced that, and that's a big negative. And we're literally like, all right, we're canceling Netflix streaming because of that. We haven't done it yet, but we're real close.
Yeah, and speaking of, from a content rights holder perspective, do you see any movement toward allowing more downloading, or is the fear of piracy so great there, even with DRM? I mean, so much is available to stream, so little is available to download, but there are so many more real applications where that would improve the experience.
To be perfectly clear, that's well above my pay grade in terms of how they think about it. I mean, the good news is about it at Epix is that we do, we don't really, when we have issues or questions, the people on our board are the dudes that run the studios, so we can kind of cut through a lot of the clutter. But the thing that was fascinating to me, I started working on Epix as a favor to Mark, who's the CEO of the company, 3.5, 4 years ago, and I'm still here. My deal was, let me help you get this thing started, and I'll talk to you later. And in the very first meeting we had with the studios, I started asking about, streaming rights versus download rights, and sort of who manages what. And the resounding response was, you tell me what the thing is that we're going to give you that's going to help you make the most money, and that's what you can have. So for us, we're in a very different position. We have unexploited rights that we've got with our product. I haven't seen a download product that I would want to put my content into, as much as I hate the word content. There's not great experiences. There's not great reliability. There's not great portability. So I think that there's this understanding, there's this myth that streaming and downloads are different, and there's this myth that studios are very restrictive about what they'll give you. They're kind of not. They're restrictive about giving you access to product in ways that they don't think are actually going to generate the return based on the number of people they need to mobilize to actually give you stuff. I mean, that's really the first layer of the math that goes into it. But if you guys open up an API on TiVo that lets me buffer films, I'll come back with a grant of right from the studios in about 30 minutes to get that done.
I'll make a note of that.
But no, seriously, write that down. Tell Tara to call me. But at the end of the day, there's got to be a great product. There's got to be great portability, and there's got to be a great business reason to do it. So I think it's more technical than it is business related.
One of the last things, I don't want to steal it, I want to hear the rest of the panel, but the nice thing about TiVo is with companies that allow us to record their videos and send them to your iPad or PC, like I take an hour train ride in, and I'm catching on Conan for the last night, Jimmy Fallon, and so forth, offline, right? So it takes a few minutes, you set it up, and you wake up in the morning, transfers right over to your iPad, and you're watching the show with the ability to fast forward and so forth. So to TiVo, this has been a huge consumer, user experience that they love. And a lot of the other MSOs are saying, hey, you can stream it in different rooms, but once you leave the area, and then still the streaming with the buffering. But this is great because you're literally downloading it right to your, they're not doing the new shows, but they're doing the shows, like, a Letterman, where they'd rather have you watch it the next day than not watch it at all.
And they get the C3 credit for that as well?
I believe so, yes.
Advertising. Nielsen records within 72 hours viewing, and so that happens. Let's. We've got about 15 minutes left. Let's open it up to questions from the audience. Yes.
Shaiban Moshe, Content ID Group. Good afternoon, everybody.
Hi. Hello.
The question is it broken, and to what extent is it broken because of companies in the industry that wish to maintain a vested model and aren't leaning forward as much into the new paradigm versus just technology that doesn't exist or business models per se? What do you think that is? And are they leaning forward more heavily at this point, or do they still have to put on the brakes a bit? Okay, so I'm asked to repeat the questions for the recording. So is it broken because companies are trying to maintain traditional business models more, or is it more broken because technology isn't there? That's the gist of it, right? Do you see that accelerating or not accelerating?
It's broken because Ed only has 3 million Rokus out there. Right? I'm not. 3 million is a hugely impressive number, but that number needs to be 73 million.
Yeah.
It needs to be 93 million.
Yeah, and I think it does. It does indeed. And we look forward to a big fourth quarter. But from a content licensing standpoint, when I started with the company 2.5 years ago, and when I would go and talk to a cable network about TV Anywhere or TV Everywhere, whatever you want to call it, the doors would just get slammed in our face about having a real conversation. There's just no way. Now, 2.5 years later, maybe we should talk. I've always liked you. So it's starting to loosen, right? The industry moves slowly. Business models are entrenched. This business has been in place for decades, and so to get the business models and the current agreements to completely pivot. It's an awful big shift, and it's going to take an awful long amount of time. But that said, we are seeing some opportunities. Obviously, with Epix, taking the first leap, they're our first authenticated channel. HBO was next. We've got several others in the queue. I think there's a lot happening in this space, and I think we're going to see an awful lot happening in this space in the next 2 to 3 years that'll surprise a lot of people.
Great question over here.
I guess this is probably mostly for Roku. You mentioned Epix and HBO, which is, in a sense, linear programming, but it's also stored content. It's already produced and packaged. Do you have any prospects, or where do you see live content getting delivered onto these platforms, especially over inventory?
Sure. Yeah. So we have.
Let me just.
Sorry.
So we've been talking a lot about pre-recorded content. What about live content?
Yeah, so we have live content today. We have a lot of international channels that stream live content from overseas. We have a lot of live sports, so MLB, NBA, NHL, MLS, UFC. They're all streaming live sporting events. And so we have a live web feed from FoxNews.com that we stream every day. There's live news coming across from Wall Street Journal. So the platform can certainly support the model for live content from that perspective. So we're starting to see an increase in content that is available live to customers.
Yes.
I can't help but think that there's probably a lot of trepidation right now that Apple hasn't kind of just come in, dropped the other shoe, and gobbled up 75 to 90% of all of the profits that everyone's fighting over in this nascent industry. I'm kind of curious to get this panel's perspective on, are they waiting for the other shoe to drop? Do they feel that Apple's current Apple TV plus Airstream or whatever is all that they have coming, or is there kind of a lot of bated breath right now?
So the question, I think, is the panel anticipating that Apple is going to come out with something else in the TV space, or just stay more or less where they are?
Okay, I'll take it. Sorry about that. Yes, the answer to your question is yes, to all of the above, right? I mean, Apple can put their logo on this thing, right, and they're going to sell 50 million of them just because that's Apple. So they have the luxury of.
When does that launch?
And they have the luxury of the brand. And so from everything we see, obviously you all read the press every day. A lot of rumblings about a TV, a real Apple TV. I think the CEO at Foxconn all but sort of confirmed that was happening, but sometime in 2013. And so, I mean, Steve Jobs, had said for a long time, that the Apple TV project was just a hobby for them. It's clear from sort of how they're putting it in the marketplace that continues to be so. They iterate a little bit, and add a couple more channels here and there, but that's about it. So I think we're all curious to see what that product's going to be. It's not going to be cheap. So we'll be anxious to see what's happening there. But I mean, just from a sales standpoint, overall, the world's a big place, and Apple obviously is a huge brand. They do quite well across all their products, obviously, and they do well in the stock market. But there's a lot of other markets out there where Apple is not going to play. Obviously, developing a channel for them can prove to be challenging. And so if you provide an open platform where anybody can get a seat at the table to the living room TV, that's a pretty compelling model. And there's an awful lot of opportunity for content partners in that realm.
Question here.
You talked a little bit about interface, particularly the TiVo QWERTY control. But TiVo also has an excellent iPad interface, as does Roku. Have you found that you've gotten much pickup on those, and where do you see the second screen experience going with that with your hardware?
Yeah. So how many people are using the second screen experience, the iPad control for TiVo and Roku? Where's that going?
I'll be honest, not that many yet. We have a very loyal fan base, but once again, it's slower to adopt. My kids love it because they can change the channel without me knowing it. They're out playing Angry Birds, and all of a sudden I see like Phineas and Ferb come on the TV, and I'm like, wait a minute, where did that come from? But it is great. One example is Conan O'Brien has this app, Coco Plus or whatever, Team Coco, and it gets you more involved, right? So one thing is it helps you discover shows. B, you can talk to your friends real time on it. And C, you can kind of shoot notes back and forth to Conan O'Brien. So I think it lies in the execution. I think that's the way it's going to go because we know how big social's been, right? TV's a big part of social. It's the water cooler effect. Why wait to the water cooler? Why not do it real time? So I've seen at least the activity in that grow a lot. Now, the user base might not be that high, but of the users that have adapted it, they're growing very quickly.
Yes?
You said a lot about problems with search and accessibility. What do you think is the ideal search interface or search device? Is that a Google white page, or is that a sort of categorized associations, or where will you be going in this direction?
What is the ideal search interface, and where will you be going?
Well, I think TiVo leads the search capability. So you can type in your favorite actor, your favorite character, your favorite show, and it'll say it's available on Amazon, Blockbuster, Hulu, Netflix, and so forth. So, and then you can set up a wish list for that. So if you like De Niro movies, you can say, De Niro, record every one that's on there. So I think it's one of those added values that I would never find shows that there's just too much on TV to know everything that airs. So you type a key actor in, or a key thing, Diego for kids or whatever, and it helps with the experience. It's the discovery. There's a new show on recently called The Bee in Apartment 23. And I saw TiVo does like top shows every night, and it said new, and I said, oh, that sounds interesting. They give you recommendations, and I seasoned past it, and now it's one of my wife and I, our favorite show. So I think, and it's smart learning too, because you have the thumbs up and thumbs down on TiVo, which says what you like or not, but it also just knows what you're watching and what you're recording. So it's that discovery. It's kind of like the way ads pop up when you're searching for something, and you may be searching for gun holsters, and all of a sudden you're like, whoa, gun holster, what's this site popping up over here? I don't want that on my work computer. You need it for your dad's Christmas present because he's a hunter. So I think it's moving in the right direction once again towards that digital marketing space. So it just helps you once again understand it moves towards that one-on-one communication tactic versus the mass reach. So it's a combination of the mass of the TV, but then drilling down to, we're going to serve you the ads or the suggested shows based on what we know of you that you'll enjoy. Now, if Playboy TV comes up as your most requested, you might want to hide that from your wife or something like that. But for the most part, you're going to see stuff that's relevant. I have a young family, and we've got, cartoons that come up, and we're big into nature shows and Disney and so forth. So it's been a real help for us, as in discovering stuff we wouldn't have discovered before. I'm not sure if that answers that, but...
Yeah. Question back here.
Yeah, do you think some of these technologies that all of you represent up here are pretty disruptive to the MSOs out there, the big cable companies? Where do you see that moving forward? Is it going to be amiable, or is it going to be more contentious?
So where's the relationship with traditional video service providers, MSOs, et cetera, going?
Well, we only sell through MSOs. I happen to define Netflix as an MSO, but we do not sell directly to customers at all. And based on what little I know about their businesses, I think those guys have a lot of fight in them, and I think that they're working on some really, really smart things to bring new product to market in new and interesting ways. And the question was asked earlier about sort of the scope and the scale, and are people leaning forward in the business evolution, or are they leaning back? And I think that several of the more cutting-edge, larger MSOs and ISPs out there are on the verge of some really impressive things, and it's gonna be a very interesting fight.
Ed, I guess you're probably the most disruptive on the panel.
Yeah, and I think from a Roku standpoint, I mean, we take a very friendly approach to the incumbents. We have very good relationships and open conversations with all the MVPDs today. You see, Xbox had a partnership with Fios and Xfinity, and they launched those earlier this year. So I think they're starting to think about this in a big way. I think you'd be surprised 2 years ago if you would see an Xfinity app, on an Xbox or on a Roku or somebody like that. But I think as we continue to see the market evolve and change, I think the paid TV operators are starting to think about this in a different way, and I think they're willing to dip a toe in the water and try some things. I think they're realizing now that it's not just a fad. but it's here to stay, and consumers want to get access to their content on a myriad of different devices. It's also a capital expense for them to add to increase truck rolls, 3.2 set-top boxes per household. They want to reduce that footprint as best they can. So I think there's a lot of opportunity there, and hopefully if Roku has its way, the relationship will be friendly for years to come.
Question here.
Well, where's the industry at in terms of the cost to deliver video, particularly in comparing a traditional digital cable plant with internet-based delivery?
So where's the industry in terms of cost to deliver over the internet versus a traditional cable plant?
Significantly lower with the new models.
And in some cases, almost non-existent.
Right. But again, not without its challenges, too.
Sure. But my only point is we co-lo with some of our bigger operators, the actual movie data store, so that if you're within our customer's footprint and you're accessing our assets within their network, there's no off-network bandwidth costs. And it's a better experience because you can manage QoS because you know what the packet is, you know what the traffic is. A lot of that stuff kind of comes into play. And I think that's a very under-leveraged, under-thought-about position that a lot of these folks have, in my opinion.
Yes?
Yes, you brought up before about AT&T, and similar to the question about cable companies, my understanding is that there just isn't enough bandwidth for the cell phone companies and the internet to keep delivering internet TV, but there is enough bandwidth on the TV side to deliver internet TV through the UHF and that bandwidth. So I was wondering, because the advertising dollars for TV everywhere have to keep moving to different markets, how that's playing out in terms of bandwidth and business model.
I'd like to restate my position that internet TV is broken.
So anyway, the question was about cost to deliver over various channels. I think wireless versus traditional broadcast infrastructure. And I think wireless, the answers you gave earlier around IP delivery were over broadband to the home, as opposed to when you take a full end-to-end cost into account.
Your microphone.
You've okay.
2 seconds. I'll be right back.
Sure. We're just about done anyway. But just to, did anyone want to comment on wireless delivery versus broadband and the end-to-end cost there?
I'm probably ill-equipped. So
I mean, one of the great things about our business is that we don't really do anything in the advertising space. So, I'm not smart enough to know about it. So I work at a company where I have to think about it. So, go me. But at the end of the day, I don't think that there should be a difference or there will be a difference. Whatever that connection is, whatever that endpoint is, and I'm not knocking AT&T for their product, right? The problem is it's too good of a product and everybody wants to use it, right? Whatever the handset is, whatever the network is, there's more demand than the network can handle. And I think moving forward, as these networks get deployed and as bandwidth, becomes more readily available, all of those questions are going to be resolved, and no one's going to think about it, right? There is no sister conference to streaming media called UHF Broadcaster, right? And there probably hasn't been in 40 years, but it's just one of those things that works, and we will get to that position where it just works.
Interesting. All right, one last question. Yes.
Well, just to follow up with her again too. UHF, DVGH. There was one word, media flow. Remember? No?
Yep.
Media flow?
It's gone.
Yeah.
Right? Gone.
Well, yeah, and I think, there are issues. It's hard to separate in some ways the business model and the customer value proposition from how it got there. But anyway, no, it's an interesting question. Will there ever be enough bandwidth for all of the video and the increased resolution of video as well as we get into 4K and beyond? Will we ever keep up? So anyway, with that, we are out of time, but please join me in thanking our panelists.